now that we're done on Brio, what's next on the agenda?
Brio is now saved from further phase-on corruption.
Well, it's still overrun with people who hate any and all technology, so I don't think they're going to do anything to thank the Federation for helping them with that little problem. Anyway, seems we know our next major boss fight is going to be against Gore. Again, don't remember having much of an emotional reaction to the boss fights against Gore or Gondreda. The only one I really felt anything for was the first one we had to kill. Run this.
Unit 217 is stationed. Unit 217 has been infected by the corruption virus and is currently offline. I have uploaded a program to your suit that will purge any traces of corruption in the AU.
I don't suppose the program that can remove phase-on from an Aurora unit can also do the same for a human female, or does the miracle cure only happen for biological supercomputers? Not that I feel any tension for us possibly dying to disease in this action-oriented game, even ignoring the fact that we know Samus will live long enough to see the events of most of the 2D games, which were released before this one. There is just zero tension for our hero dying to a disease instead of enemy attacks. It didn't work for Batman Arkham City, it's not gonna work for Metroid Prime 3. Anyway, time to travel to the next planet. So, both planets look pretty orange from space. Excuse me for expecting a more drastic difference from above. Certainly Star Wars games tend to make the planets the heroes go to look at least a little different from above. You're certainly not going to confuse Tatooine for Yavin 4 or Hoth. And it's not like the Metroid series is shy about giving us extremely different environments. Hell, in the first Metroid Prime, we had a lava location, ice location, desolate ruins, a rainforest, and a toxic phase-on environment, all on the same planet. Whereas here, we've left a planet that shifted between desolate ruins to fuel gel pools, and then on a planet that is purely Cloud City and probably abandoned. I am vaguely disappointed that Lando Calrissian didn't walk up to meet us as we landed here. Okay, apparently we've got a lot of things floating around at the moment around here. I suppose it's getting a bit more active on this planet than the last one we were at from the start. Not that that's difficult to pull off.
Your priority is to get Skytown's Aurora unit back online.
Yes, you already told us that before we even gained the coordinates to this place, and you'll excuse me for refusing to call this place Skytown. That sort of name would be acceptable in a game like Fallout or Legend of Zelda. In Metroid, it just doesn't feel like it fits. I'll just keep referring it to the place as the planet name, Elysia. Assuming, of course, that I don't just decide to call the place an evacuated Bespin and keep making Star Wars jokes while we're here. On the one hand, it's Metroid. I have enjoyed every Metroid game we've LP'd, and by some hilarious miracle I can't manage to get the games I don't like in the franchise to work on any emulators properly enough to play through. Even the ones that put me in a bad mood like Metroid Prime 2 and, well, this game, I enjoy a good deal. Even as I bitch about various details. On the other hand, the whole planet hopping thing is not really something I like as a concept for Metroid, and I'm really hoping they don't pull it in Metroid Prime 4 when that finally releases. I'm also hoping that at best the Federation just gives Samus a job and lets her do her thing, not send an entire battle fleet to show up for a few dramatic specific moments. Or hey, maybe she's the one that gets hunted by the Federation due to her part Metroid DNA after the events of Fusion and Dread. But enough talking about the hypotheticals of a game that hasn't released yet. Let's focus on the fact that once again we're running through the remains of the Chozo civilization. It's funny how I'm more sick of being on Chozo-related planets than I am of fighting against Ridley, when Ridley has been in more games. Maybe that was one of the reasons they decided to give this game several planets for us to go to. They could say they did the obligatory Chozo setting, And also say they didn't make this game just absolutely revolve around the Chozo. Right. Of course they managed to see the problems we're dealing with now in an obscene amount of time in the past, and I'm sure they did so with more accuracy than their more isolated brethren on Talon 4. Please tell me they don't have some magical solve everything button somewhere around here. Well, what a coincidence. We have just the right phase-on trick to break through this. Oddly surprised we didn't get a short cutscene with Samus getting a slight bit more infected due to another unavoidable use of the hyper mode. I doubt the etchings on the glass mattered at any point. And apparently the only way to break the glass is to use missiles. Good thing we have a good supply this far in. We've certainly got no supply issues in this game, that's for sure. Hell, it's probably a subtle hint from the game that I shouldn't be so stingy with my ammo here. Really wish I could find it in me to be amazed at the sight here, but this isn't the first floating city I've seen, and it certainly won't be the last on this channel. And apparently we have to use some slightly annoying rail lines to get from point to point, though they're only annoying because I'm getting sick of the grapple beam. Yeah, they're definitely putting the grapple beam through its paces in this game. I get it. It's more versatile than in any other point in the franchise. But I am just getting absolutely tired of having to use it for pretty much everything. Just like I'm so tired of the motion control gimmicks that they throw in, so you need to pull a lever or twist something in place. Well, the first on-rails bit for this planet didn't have anything especially challenging, but I'm sure later ones will make it a bit more troublesome to actually make it from point A to point B. Okay, so our enemies this time are random robots, because as usual, we want things to seem pretty desolate when Samus arrives. I suppose that's better than the way the game started, where Samus was absolutely surrounded by people. Still, there's just something about the execution, even when the game is doing things right, that doesn't click with me the right way. Possibly because of the things they punched at the start, setting a tone that the game actually wasn't going to follow. Really wish I could feel intimidated by the line of robots marching at us and shooting. Sure, they're more numerous than the lizards from Rio, but they're a good deal more fragile as well. They just feel like a downgrade in threat level to me. And it's not like I felt all that threatened by the lizards on the previous planet. Huh. I would have thought making your sanctuary above the clouds would help prevent erosion from the elements, but then what do I know? It's not like I've ever lived somewhere above the clouds. Great. Now I'm getting flashbacks to Transformers. Seriously. Robotic race that has been abandoned for so long by their creators that even digital memory starts to fade for what made them in the first place. Not that this planet is gonna have us run into anyone like Optimus Prime or Megatron, not with the way this game's story went on Brio. We're just here to destroy the Leviathan from the inside, and most of our time here is gonna be spent trying to find our way to do that. The lore we find on the planet is interesting, but for the most part unimportant considering our situation and what we're here to do. At least on Aether and Talon 4, it felt like the things we read were immediately important to what was going on around us, and since we stayed on those planets, learning about the history of them felt more intriguing. Not the first time we've been launched from a cannon in this series, but somehow the distance feels a bit on the ridiculous side. Though maybe that's just because I've been on a bad mood for a good chunk of this game. Bit troublesome to reach, but again, not as rough as many of the other upgrades we've seen over the course of this franchise. I'm just really getting the sense that this game is not trying all that hard to make puzzles in the same way that the other Metroid games do. Right, so we're going to have to gain a multi-lock weapon before we're allowed to interact with that thing, whatever it is. And apparently we'll be gaining a heat-related weapon before we're done here as well. I'm definitely finding myself missing the days when we had to explore things to find what we needed to open various areas up, instead of the game pretty much telling us or explicitly giving it to us as we accomplish the objectives they point us to. Sure, there were moments where I'd stumble around having no clue where to go next, and I would have to fast forward to keep myself sane while watching the footage, but it really feels like this game tried to homogenize itself too much in order to gain more of an audience, since this was released on the obscenely popular Nintendo Wii. An odd decision, since this was the end of a trilogy, though it's kind of funny that Nintendo decided to re-release the other two games on top of this one for a release on the same system. Re-releases weren't really that big of a thing on consoles, at least not games from one console generation to the immediate next. I mean, sure, Capcom and Sega would re-release some of their games a number of times, but that was something like Sega Genesis games being put on the GameCube, and Dreamcast games being sent to more successful systems when the Dreamcast failed to get too much traction. These days, re-releases feel like they've replaced the market that rushed movie-based games used to have. He's probably never gonna stop feeling odd when I see us activate a handprint sensor when our hand doesn't even match the thing that we're touching. I suppose that's less bullshit than the sheer number of times we see paths and objects that are specifically designed for the morph ball when Samus is the only one in the franchise who has that trick as far as I know. And we've got a spider ball track. That makes 3 upgrades we see that we need to use on this planet later. Anyone want to bet those mechanical sounds are hostile? Oh, why am I even bothering to ask? We very rarely run into anything friendly in a Metroid game. Or most of the games I play through, period. Well, hello there. You've certainly got a nice cape, and you're apparently summoning a bunch of disposable bots we've already been blasting apart in this clip. I've probably said this before, but it feels worth saying again. This game certainly feels like it moves at a faster pace than the other 2 Metroid Primes. Things have been pretty eventful from one clip to the next, as opposed to the longer periods of nothing really happening in the previous entries. The problem is, I can't find it in me to feel all that hyped when something like a boss or mini-boss happens because of that. Things just happen. I react to them in the moment, and then maybe afterwards say, huh, neat. this guy has certainly run out of disposable bots to throw at us, at least for the moment. The only things this guy can do are revive the destroyed robots and temporarily disappear. Definitely not the kind of boss that's gonna stick to my memory, that's for sure. Hell, they didn't even give this guy a health bar. 500 kills, and I can't find it in me to give a damn. Again, I can't help wondering if the game end screen is gonna mention just how many monsters we killed when all this is said and done. Okay, so finishing off that absolutely necessary mid-boss gains us another energy tank. Again, it feels like those things are being given way too generously compared to the other Metroids. Anyway, seems we've got a fourth upgrade we're gonna have to gain on this planet, the speed boost. At the very least, it suggested we might. Maybe it's on an even later planet. Until then, we've got more grapple beam stuff to do. Well, there's our door out of here. Not that we've got much of a choice to go back the way we came. Wish I could say that the lore in this game has been doing a decent job of satisfying my intellectual appetite. Unfortunately, in some ways it feels a bit emptier than the lore entries we saw in the previous two games, though, again, that might just be my bad mood. Granted, this specific bit of lore mentions a living planet. We've never seen anything like that before, so it's probably a good bet that we're going to see this living planet later in this game. Still, there's no kidding around the fact that Norian, Brio, and Elysium are all pretty disconnected from one another. What we learn in one planet rarely has any bearing on what we need to know later on, and for Brio and Elysia, they are both the ruins of an already gone civilization, even if the civilizations are different. So part of my brain can't help linking the two planets together as the Ruins planet, even though they look visually distinct enough to tell the difference. Huh. Only just noticed that other door on the lower level. Huh. Doesn't seem like there's a way forward from here. I suppose it was a bit of a waste of time to even check. Ah, well. At least that was a small moment of trying to explore in this game. Even if it doesn't really feel as satisfying to me as filling in the map in the other Metroids. Again, it feels like the various hallways and direct paths to our next objective are a bit too spelled out to us in comparison to the rest of the franchise. Really? Floating saw blades that only exist when we decide to go through the rail. Bit of a shame that I can't scan them to see what explanation there is for them to try to make things more difficult for us to cross from one building to another. I get it from a gameplay point of view, but I'd still like an in-universe explanation outside of the machines disliking Samus for some reason. Is it because Gore hacked them? Or maybe the machines sense that Samus has some Chozo DNA, but isn't actually a Chozo, so they don't really know how to react. There could be a number of possible explanations, none of which are going to be properly explored in this game, because in the grand scheme of things, Brio and Elysia are just as unimportant as one another. Norian was only more important, because it was the setting for the big action set piece of the prologue. Right. This is as good a time as any to save the game.